It's a great pleasure to start the second part of the day with our first panel of the afternoon, entitled Setting Up a National NGAP Strategy. To have a strategy is important, both for states and for us in ICAO. So I will handle this important task to our moderator, to Mr. Haydar YALÇIN, the Deputy Director of Civil Aviation of Turkey. Please welcome.
Thank you, Catalin. It's really great pleasure for me to moderate this important session, panel 5, on setting up a national NGAP strategy. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you all for the 5th panel on the topic of setting up a national NGAP strategy. For the last 2 days, we had a great platform and a chance to discuss and share the ideas for supporting the NGAP initiative of ICAO. Within this panel, we would like to address the importance of the states, universities, and other stakeholders' role for setting up the national NGAP strategy within the scope of the cooperation between government, industry, and academia. It's obvious that qualified personnel are the key catalysts for a safe, secure, and sustainable aviation system. Therefore, we need to establish a well-designed platform with the contribution of all stakeholders and attract the young generation. One of the main aims of the NGAP should be addressing the state-specific human resources needs, reflecting their national priorities in order to sustain a fully functional aviation system without compromising on security and safety. As is mentioned by ICAO, it has the utmost importance to encourage collaboration between states and the aviation industry to identify long-term human resource needs by forecasting the shortage of aviation professionals and establish strategies to attract, educate, and retain aviation professionals, considering gender equality by the exchange of knowledge, ideas, best practices, and experiences regarding the NGAP-related strategies and activities amongst states, industry, international organizations, education institutions, and training centers. We will look for the answers of some questions in our panel, such as where does a state start in setting up a national NGAP strategy? How can cooperate between the government, industry, and academia be facilitated? And why is that gap analysis is important? Having said all these, ladies and gentlemen, I have the great pleasure to introduce the esteemed and distinguished panel members, Mr. D from CAA China, Mr. VIDAL DELGADO from ICAO Council of Uruguay and Ambassador to ICAO, Mr. Chun Deputy Director Aviation Industry, CAA Singapore, Javier VICEDO from EASA, and Gun Yang Lee, Professor from the Academia of Korea National University of Transportation. I kindly invite all panelists to use maximum 8 minutes each to proceed as scheduled. And my intention is to open the floor for the question from the audience at the end, depending on time. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. VIDAL DELGADO with requesting him to provide answers on what is the current situation in Uruguay in setting up a national NGAP strategy, and why is a gap analysis important. Please join me to warm welcome Mr. Delgado.
Ni hao, Shen Shen. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here. And I have to thank ICAO and the municipality of Shenzhen for organizing this second global summit and for inviting me to take part of it. Allow me to recognize that in the room today, my dear colleague Martín Alves, Consul General of Uruguay in Guangdong, is here with us. Raising public awareness and engaging with all stakeholders are two of the main ways to achieve sustainable solutions for the next generation of aviation professionals. This global summit will help us a lot in this regard, especially as it takes place in the heart of the highest and fastest growing region that will need more aviation professionals than any other. So congratulations to China and the municipality of Shenzhen for stepping up to the challenge. There is no magic recipe for this challenge raised by the NGAP. It requires sustained attention, open dialogue, cooperation, and a clear commitment from international organizations, governments, the academia, and of course, the industry. Awareness is a key concept for the NGAP program. And I like to see this problem or this issue as a twofold awareness challenge. One, naturally, about the lack of knowledge on the opportunities that this sector can provide. But there is another one, much more basic. There is the lack of awareness in many cases about the catalytic role that civil aviation plays in socioeconomic development. The mother of all priorities on any aspect related to civil aviation is to make civil aviation a priority. Without this, it is very difficult to move forward at the national level. This notion is very simple and basic, but too often it is absent or we take it for granted. This means that while it is very important to frame the NGAP within national aviation strategies, it is essential that we first prioritize civil aviation within our national development plans. For some countries, this is a given. For sure, for countries like China, Turkey, Singapore represented in this panel. But this is not the case for everybody. This is the vision, and this is not the case for my country up to now. This is the vision that Secretary General Fang Liu brought to Uruguay when she visited us in 2017. And now, with the guidance and support of ICAO, Uruguay is developing a national master plan for a sustainable civil aviation whose first step will be ready in March 2019. We are exactly doing this, making civil aviation a priority, and within that, we need to ensure that the guidance and tools to assist states to develop their own national NGAP strategies are included in the master plan and remain a priority in the new system. The engagement at the national level needs to be complemented by regional actors. In this regard, ICAO's regional offices play a critical role, but they shouldn't be alone. We should be able to bring to the table regional financial institutions. Their engagement and commitment is crucial to address this gap in different parts of the world where national actors cannot solve it alone. This is what my country is doing as we co-finance the development of our national plan with the Inter-American Development Bank. As we have heard, there is a need to act at all levels, and lessons can be learned from different cases, inside and outside of civil aviation. Today, we heard many ideas and initiatives within the air transport sector. But there are other actions taken outside the aviation world that are worth observing as well. For example, the steps taken by governments that are facing a diminishing workforce due to aging and slower population growth. Mobility and flexibility could represent decisive elements to help to fill the gap. This means working on immigration policies that could be adapted to mitigate this gap by encouraging greater mobility. There is still plenty to do to attract more women into civil aviation and help them realize that there are endless opportunities for them as well. This is an industry historically dominated by men. What could happen to this gap in aviation professionals if we are able to attract more women into civil aviation? By addressing today's gender gap in civil aviation, we could be helping to fill the gap on the NGAP in the near future. Therefore, it is important that the NGAP and the gender equality programs reinforce each other. And in this regard, I would like to support the comments raised today by Madame Nicolas Girard in the panel on women, on gender and aviation. And the challenge for NGAP is not just to attract, but also to retain the professionals, especially the next generation. And this is key for women, especially when they have to come back to work after having children. We need to work in making it easier, not just for women, but for everybody, to conciliate jobs and family. Today, with all that is going on across the world on women's rights, and with the leadership of Dr. Fang Liu as the Secretary General of ICAO, it is hard to think of a better moment to push this vision forward. And talking about the challenge of retaining professionals, we need to take into account that the next generation doesn't think like mine, the Generation X, or they don't think like the baby boomers even. They are in constant flux. Millennials change jobs more often than previous generations. So we need for more flexibility during the development of careers and to facilitate continuous learning. Aviation, as Claude mentioned earlier today, is a fascinating world. So we should start attracting the next generation early. For example, by increasing the number of paid internships and co-op arrangements at the beginning of university careers. Ladies and gentlemen, few activities are so strictly regulated and overseen like civil aviation. Thanks to this activity enjoys the highest safety standards. Without any doubt, there is no other means of transport safer than aviation. What's the problem then? That today, in many countries, the youth are not attracted by civil aviation, as there are other professions that offer equal or better income with less effort and stress. So, let's increase the multi-stakeholder partnerships and not forget the basic issues. Salaries need to be attractive and competitive. Governance structures need to be transparent, agile and attractive for young professionals, with clear career opportunities and with merit that should be encouraged and rewarded. ICAO has a catalytic role to play. This is a global challenge, and ICAO has been tremendously efficient and effective in addressing other global challenges, for example, on the environmental protection and climate change. If we attach similar level of energy and engagement with the next generation of aviation professionals, I'm sure that we will succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Delgado, for this clear presentation and view. And we have heard something important such as awareness, prioritization, and planning, master and strategic planning are the important issues, and we are still some challenges for the future of success. So after this, secondly, I would also like to invite Mr. Yang to provide his comments on the same questions from Singapore perspective. Please, warm welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, just like to thank ICAO and organizers for inviting us to share on this topic of where does the state start in setting up a national NGAP strategy. So just a brief background of the air transport sector in Singapore. Aviation actually contributes up to 6% of our national GDP and is also a strong enabler of economic growth and supports many other sectors of the economy. And as many other speakers has already mentioned throughout the conference, aviation is expected to grow, and so we see that strongly for both passenger traffic and cargo traffic as well. So in direct support of this projected growth in the next decade, of course, one of the key factors is new infrastructure development to support the capacities. So just a brief snapshot of some of the infrastructure developments in Singapore. You can see that last year we've already opened Terminal 4. Terminal 1 and dual capacity expansion on the land side is due to open next year. And also in the longer term, the third runway and Terminal 5 is slated for the early 2030s. And so besides the hardware development, of course, a strong topic that we have been discussing for this conference is what are we doing about the manpower and the workforce development as well. Just a brief background, real value add per worker for the air transport sector in Singapore is strong at about 250,000. This is roughly double the national average of the value add per worker for Singapore as a whole. So all in all, this is actually a very attractive industry for our workers. And as the sector grows, we expect the workforce, of course the demand is going to grow, and the vacancies will have to keep up. But one other area that we've been placing our attention on is also that we want to try and shift the demographics a little bit. So the chart here actually shows that the numbers of the jobs by wage bands. So the lower tiers are the lower wage bands and the higher tiers are the higher wage bands. So one key areas that we're looking at is how can we limit the growth of the lower wage bands and try and shift some of this to the higher tier wage bands as well. And of course this is in line with the aspirations of the workforce population. I think we've all heard the demographic challenges that we are all facing, especially for developed countries like Singapore, low birth rates, a shrinking workforce, aging population, and so that places a constraint or demand on the supply for workforce. And at the same time, the evolving aspirations of the workers, where they are looking forward to more, they desire more good jobs, better remunerated, and more good career and educational advancements as well. And all in all, this is actually sets the background and guidance for how we set our workforce and NGAP manpower development strategies. So in summary, this is a high-level vision that we have set about, and we call it the Air Transport Industry Transformation Map. So this was actually established in 2017 to provide a roadmap for the future of Singapore aviation. The ITM, which we call in short, is actually a tripartite effort between unions, our industry, and our government to achieve a high-quality air hub, good aviation jobs, and a smart airport. And all in all, under this ITM, we have 4 key pillars, for which I'll elaborate a little bit further on. So under the first 2 pillars, we have innovation and productivity, and this is nothing new as well, which we've seen mentioned throughout the earlier sessions of our earlier panels of this conference. So we seek to leverage innovation to develop novel solutions, develop new capabilities, and to accelerate the use of technology in the air transport sector to enhance productivity. So some of the examples here I think you can see are the use of autonomous assets, the use of robotics, the use of automation, and also as well as the encouragement of more self-service options to achieve higher throughput and higher productivity from our manpower workforce. And correspondingly, alongside the use of technology and productivity efforts, we also see a strong focus or a strong need to focus on the development of jobs and skills, the corresponding skill sets that our workers will need to be trained for, and such that they are able to support this adoption of technology that will be upcoming. And lastly, with the new capabilities and innovation efforts that we embarked on, we also see that this is a potential for enterprise or new business opportunities for some of our stakeholders once they are fully developed and prototype. Right. So moving on, just to focus a little bit more on jobs and skills and manpower development of our workforce, we do see it as a life cycle approach. I think this is also evident in what we've seen here today. So from tertiary students to fresh graduates who have freshly entered the workforce, and lastly also to in-employment workers. So we do see the need to reskill and retrain our workers, because they, even after they start work, they still need to pick up new skills and to follow along with the adoption of technology that will be increasingly, which will be picking up pace as we go along. And at the same time, I think this is something we've seen also. How do we see the pipeline and build the interest for manpower to join the aviation sector? So some of the initiatives that we also embarked on in collaboration with schools, development of Air Scouts, which is a co-curricular activity in Singapore. We hold inspiring aviators talks. We do internships, we do aviation learning journeys, we do employment open houses, and lastly, with a social media presence as well to regularly engage and get the information out there to our young and our youth. And this is my concluding slide, whereby we also see it as this is not just an effort of one party, it's a collective effort between government, between unions, between industries, and actually as we've seen today, we look forward to sharing and collaborating with all of you today to do NGAP development for the future of aviation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yang. He has mentioned that aviation is key for the national growth and national economy, and the capacity increases the needs of the manpower, and also evolving aspirational workforces also, and the demand is getting bigger and bigger, so we need more people, as during the last 2 days many of the speakers has underlined this important issue. And also Mr. Yang has mentioned technology, digitalization and automation, which also using the new business models, and the collective efforts is also important for getting success. So thank you, Mr. Yang, and also I would like to ask Mr. Weiguang D, how can cooperation between the government, industry and academia be facilitated? And let me invite Mr. Weiguang with warm welcome, please.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my great pleasure to participate in the meeting of the NGAP 2. I am more than pleased to introduce to you what the Chinese are doing. And currently, for the China Civil Aviation Administration has been developing rapidly. Firstly, it's been developing in a benign manner, and it's said that between 2013 to 2017, the throughput has increased by more than 10% annually. Last year, passenger throughput grew to 1/8 of the global passenger throughput. Secondly, the Chinese aviation industry are interacting more with the international aviation industry. We contributed more than 25% of the global aviation growth, and our development demands more of the growth of the international society. Take the total overthrow last year, the total overthrow is already more than 1/3, and the growth rate is also higher than the average. And fourthly, the growth momentum is still here. Year to date, all the main parameters still grew or close to 10%. It is estimated that by the coming 15 years, China is going to import $24 trillion worth of the products, and the import and export volume will be close to 2 trillion, and 300 million people will go outbound to travel. And the Civil Aviation Administration is managing 5 universities, including the China Aviation University, China Aviation Flying School, the High-Level Talent School, the Shanghai Civil Aviation School, and they are the main ways for China to develop new talents. Currently, there are more than 70,000 students learning in the civil aviation education system. They can provide close to 50,000 people every year. And in the meantime, we are enhancing our trainings to the employed pilots. And currently, there are many airlines, airports, air control, as well as other supporting facilities. They are the main way for us to implement these trainings. Every year, we organize millions of times of training. And in the meantime, we also actively develop an online platform to provide online trainings and to cover more people in our trainings, especially for the frontline people, to improve the professionalism as well as the overall quality of the practitioners. China sees the civil aviation industry as an industry with a national importance, as an important bridge for opening up as well as international cooperation, and to build a strong country of aviation demand high-level talents, innovative talents, as well as a lot of high-quality management talents with international vision. Hence, the Civil Aviation Administration has initiated some more modern, more comprehensive education mechanism, and we are going to be more open. We are going to attract various resources, improve the professionalism of the talents, and to attract the talents from inside and outside of the industries, the government agencies, as well as international educational institutions, as well as some other educational institutions are all invited to participate in the training. And for a very long time period, the training was mainly supported by the above-mentioned 5 educational institutions, but along with the development of the society, this way is no longer be able to suffice the needs of the industry. Actually, we attracted the talents with experience of aviation manufacturing and transportation, as well as other senior educational institutions to participate in the developing of the talents. We actually built the China University of the Civil University with various provincial and city governments. We also signed an agreement with the Weiguang University. This will all contribute to the effort of providing more high-quality aviation talents. Secondly, we are going to focus more on the quality, which is to improve the quality of the talents developed. And we need the number, we need the quantity as well as quality in the next generation of aviation talents. First of all, we need to enhance our own disciplines in senior education institutions, including aviation, flying crew, as well as airplane maintenance. In this perspective, we are going to actively pursue more resources and build more platforms, as well as conduct cooperations. And secondly, we are going to continuously guide the universities to communicate more with the companies, to cultivate more talents that can satisfy the demand of the industry. And we already established various standards, including we developed various subjects, including the airport maintenance, as well as the airport management, on-air transportation, etc. All of the senior educational institutions need to abide by these standards to organize the training activities and to foster the next generation of talents. During which process, we also welcome the talents to participate and to inform them the licenses as well as other kind of information. In the meantime, we support the schools as well as the enterprises to join hands to discuss the future development of the enterprises.
we should cancel those disciplines that is non-relevant to our industry, and we should also set up new disciplines and courses that are highly relevant to the new trend in our industry. For example, in recent years, we have the applied psychology, applied general aircraft maintenance and repairment. You can see that by so doing, it can also help to lay the very solid foundation for the civil engineering development in China. And thirdly, that is global collaboration. We have to nurture the new generation with international horizon that can help to serve the global development of the civil aviation. On first part, we would like to encourage universities to introduce the very good talent training philosophy from overseas countries to have the joint collaboration in and outside China for the joint program. For example, China Civil Aviation Academy have a China-Europe Civil Engineering program, and we also have the so-called Aviation Engine Repair Center. And we also encourage those universities to provide your expertise to those countries who are in need of the support, especially the country along the Belt and Road region, to provide them the teaching resources for the aviation talents cultivation. At the same time, we also encourage our staff from universities and the research institute to actively participate in the international collaboration and event. I actually informed all the aviation academies and universities and encouraged them to be active in this meeting. I saw that many of them are actually here to be a part of the audience, and they also participate in any other event organized by ICAO. More importantly, we are also attaching great importance to the central, western, and the northeast part of China for their small airport operation, improving the work efficiencies and improve their safety standard. Last but not least, I have a few suggestions, actually 2 suggestions. My first suggestion, we have to strengthen our communication. China is willing to join hands with all of you to share our ideas and to learn from each other's best practice, especially on the aviation talents and professionals development, career paths, as well as some very flexible programs for the professional training. And secondly, we are also happy to join hands with high-quality teaching and training institute in and outside China to come to China to work with us jointly, and we also encourage those enterprises and then countries who are in need of the support, and China is willing to share the resources with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dee. Your points are all valid and very important, especially the effects of the growth and how the effects of the growth and how training is important for this growth. Chinese experience on this cooperation between the government, industry, and academia will be a clear guidance within this initiative. You have really extremely important experience and most welcome. That experience is most welcome. On the other side, professionalism is extremely important. You have also mentioned about the quality, which is also essential for reaching the success, and also efficiency on using the resources. And I believe everybody's agreed with your 2 suggestions on communications and high-quality teaching, but also, most importantly, the global cooperation which you mentioned is really an essential point for the success of this program. And then I would like to return back to the international organizations, Mr. VICEDO, and I invite him to provide comments on the same questions from the EASA perspective. And please be warm welcome to Mr. VICEDO.
Well, first of all, I'd like to give credit to my speakers, to my colleagues at the panel, not only because of the extreme good presentations, but because after lunch, you do not know what it is to be sitting here. Well, you can be on that side. And furthermore, knowing that the projections come up there, and you're going to be eventually looking at the screens, makes it double difficult because none of them can rest. Nevertheless, I have not any presentation on my side, so I hope that will alleviate you from any stares from our esteemed audience. So, distinguished guests and speakers, it is my pleasure to be here, representing the European Union Aviation Safety Agency. I would like to thank the organizers and ICAO for this very important initiative. At EASA, we do attach extreme importance to it and support it. Today, I'm in fact joined by 4 of our colleagues, including 2 young members of our flagship recruitment program. One which hires young graduates and gives them the opportunity during 2 years to do several jobs at EASA, as well as spend some time working for a European aviation company before coming back to the agency to take new responsibilities. More on this a bit later. Now, getting to the topic of the panel, how can cooperation between government, industry, and academia be facilitated? Now, I have to say and admit that for this topic I had some support. You see, for the last months I've been combining my work in Beijing with teaching at Beihang University, in fact. And through this experience I have managed to learn about students' expectations, as well as think about my own 20 years ago. And I come here to share some thoughts with you. I learned, for instance, that students today remain just as eager for advice and support from more experienced professionals as we were years ago. They look for progression, work-life balance, and inspiring jobs to make a change. And we have the chance as professionals to confirm these beliefs because we do know that they still remain true. As I talk to my students and I think what's in front of them, I look back at my own past and take some lessons which I want to share with you, audience, today. 20 years ago, I was a student in Spain, drawn to engineering purely for my love of motorbikes. No promises of any great future, just a simple goal to get a decent job after graduation. And then it happened. It's that moment when you look back, you realize that it changed your life. So I just bumped into a friend who told me he was joining a university's change program to go to London. Now, up nose, I'm going to London. And I looked at him and thought, you can't do that. If you do that, I'm gonna do it too. You can't be cooler than me. So an hour later, literally an hour later, I was joining him just to show myself that I could do this too. However crazy that decision may have been, now I see how it offered me the chance to discover opportunities beyond what I never thought I could experience. And this is a lesson I learned, one of them that I want to share with you today. I think governments need to support and encourage university exchange programs that offer young people the chance to discover new opportunities, much like the ones I did. In my particular case, some months later, as my exchange program neared completion, I, like many others, was willing to sacrifice some relaxing summer at home for some good job somewhere else. I was lucky enough that my academic supervisor helped me find an internship in an aerospace company. Which brings me to lesson number 2. I think academia, industry, and government ought to encourage internships that consolidate students' interests and expectations. And I want to make a suggestion to all of you here. January is coming soon, and I figured maybe we could add one more year resolution. One new year resolution, all of us. Think of 1 or 2 students. You can either offer an internship next year, or you can recommend somebody who may. And every year, if we do the same, chances are we may be on a good track. As for me, as I furthered into my internship that summer, I came upon a completely unexpected opportunity to obtain a scholarship to course a PhD. And not just any scholarship. Now hear this. There was a government-sponsored scholarship that will be granted to a university to work on a research project for an aerospace company. Now, it doesn't get much more university, government, and industry cooperation than that. And brings me to lesson number 3. University, government, and industry can provide guidance, funding, and content to students for research that is relevant and can offer rewards to all stakeholders. Governments can set up the framework and the incentives. Industry can contribute with real content and real challenges. The universities can offer guidance and build knowledge. But hold on. Isn't this applicable to any industry after all? Like, what is it that extra thing that makes it specific to aviation? And I think here is the key of the question. How do we make aviation special among so many options nowadays available? So I read once that today's European aerospace workforce in Europe relies heavily on those that will soon retire. So I look back at the time when these professionals likely made their choice, 40, 50 years ago. And I quickly realized that it was around that time that 4 countries in Europe got together and decided to give a push to the establishment of Airbus. So this brings me really to that final ingredient to make this work, which is inspiration. We have a job to do to make aviation inspirational. We start from a young age wanting to fly. And I can tell you that my 2 girls wanted to fly before they wanted to become princesses. So what gets lost? What should I do to bring back my girls into aviation before they find out they cannot afford a castle? So it should not be difficult if you think about it. Think this, every movie, and I'm serious about this, every movie that shows the future always features some cool mean of transport that involves flying. Think about any futuristic movie. There are no airplanes there and no cars. We just have flying machines. And these movies, they still show people eating with forks, chopsticks, wearing trousers and jackets. So these movies show us that people move around in different revolutionary manner. So this really gets a kick out of us when we watch it, right? So I say that the thrill of aviation is there, and we just need to make it surface again. And we need to keep pushing this message through, that aviation is not about cost-cutting and strikes, however legitimate this may be, and however newsworthy media may think they are. Aviation is about bringing us closer to the world of Star Trek, Star Wars, and the Avengers. Minus the bad guys, of course. We need to keep working on that vision. Governments, universities, and industry share that vision of the future and tell everybody that it is possible if we get to work on it. And I'm proud to say that at EASA, we are embracing this philosophy. The agency works to connect aviation and education community. We join academic programs, offer internships and opportunities for young graduates. Furthermore, in the next months, we plan to tell stories of a range of young people already working in aviation. This to assist young generations to learn about what we do, how we got into aviation, and what inspires us in this industry. We will be communicating to provide more information about initiatives across Europe that help young people to access a rewarding career. We plan to offer some guidance as well, even at a young age, giving some tips, such as getting in local flight clubs, gliding clubs, study science and technology, flying drones safely, now that the tools and the regulations are there and at affordable prices, talk to career advisors and research more about aviation jobs, and visit aviation-related conferences to catch the latest. So my final message to those of you already working in aviation: please share your story. encourage others. We're doing it at EASA, and we hope you do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you, VICEDO. In fact, you have approached the issues from a different perspective and different angle, focusing on the students' perspective, trying to understand their expectations, also providing supports to the students, a kind of exchange program, scholarships. So these are all valid and important points. As you say, each party has different responsibilities. I mean, the state, industry, and the universities have the different responsibilities, and also efforts on making aviation special is also a little bit different from the other perspective. So you all have also underlined the importance of the cooperation of all stakeholders. Thank you. And now I would like to return to the representative of the universities as academia. Mr. Lee, what and how can universities contribute to the establishment of a national national NGAP strategy? Please, the floor is yours, Mr. Lee. Please warm welcome.
Good afternoon. It is my honor and privileges to present regarding the NGAP national strategies in the perspective of national universities. I have two news. One bad news is I have presentation, and good news is I'm a professor, know how to reduce the presentation time. How can I reduce my presentation time? I will skip many slides. As you know, that the Republic of Korea has also increased a lot of air transportation, and we Koreans are the world best to enjoying the traveling with the air. Soon, the Koreans will visit your cities and your neighbors pretty much. And we have infrastructures, including several airports, including international airports. And we also have quite a lot of pilot demand. The problem is that in every year, about 600 pilots are requested from the industry. But our neighbor country, China, is inviting many Korean pilots. That is one of our problems. And there is some imbalance. The airlines require some experienced captains. But there are many young pilots who wanted to having a job in airlines. So I would like to suggest how can we fill in the gaps between the demand and the supply. Pilot demand should be precisely analyzed by universities and academics. And standard pilot training program should be developed. There are numerous different pilot programs all over the world. And we need a cooperation between government and industry and academia, as other panelists said. Another thing is data-driven evolution, and evaluation should be performed on the pilot training areas, like the safety management system, flight risk management system. Those kind of programs are based on the data-driven and requiring a lot of reporting systems. Also, there are many changes in airline industry, and they are facing a lot of mergers and newly developed low-cost carriers like that. So we need to develop the changing management concept in aviation training. For the students, academia need to provide the safety management concept as a part of a training program. And for students who want to be the professionals in aviation industry, the administrational and financial assistance should be enhanced from the government side and industry side. So what we need a professional pilot program model. And I would like to suggest some memorandum of understanding between airlines and the university for reducing the difficulties. The example is hire first and train them later. That can give the pilots for some benefits. And before hiring the pilot, the airlines or academia need to perform the pilot aptitude test. I can guarantee that the 100% passing rate cannot accomplished. Somebody should be fail in pilot training. And aviation internship program is also encouraged. The sharing data and the information among institutions, government, and industry is also very important. Finally, I would like to encourage the best practices in pilot training. I would like to conclude my suggestions. Asia Pacific and the Republic of Korea definitely need more pilots. However, training pilots takes time. And there are some imbalance between experienced captain and newly licensed pilot. So cooperation should be enhanced among stakeholders. I'm saying that universities can contribute in pilot training area with some ICAO strategies like NGAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lee. And we have experienced really a great example with your shortening the presentation. So I would like to congratulate you for your efforts. And we have listened and heard from Professor Lee that pilot demand is a valid point. Also, the difficulty in Korea is also valid for almost all over the world. During the last 2 days, we have heard many examples. Also, he underlined the importance of the experience and also imbalances of the experience on high qualified licensing personnel such as pilots, as well as evolution of the trainings. And also I have noticed that sharing data and information is also another important element, and encouraging the best practices on training activities. So thank you very much, Mr. Lee. We have 8 minutes, so we are extremely on time as scheduled, and I have 2 questions from the audience. The first question is, I think in order to build a strategy for the next generation, we must change the thinking of the experienced people for not see it as a threat to their position. The question, do we need a senior awareness program? So who is volunteered to answer this question? Maybe from the authority point of view or academia? VICEDO, please. EASA. So, do you want me to repeat the question again? Is it not working? Would you please try again?
Hello?
Yeah.
Well, I'm only answering because you were looking at me very attentively.
Beg your pardon?
You were looking at me very attentively, and I figured I should be polite.
Okay, I couldn't find any volunteers.
I wonder, maybe am I the most senior in this panel?
Maybe academia perspective?
No, it is fine. No worries. I'll take it.
Okay.
So I think it's a very valid question. Yesterday I had a very spirited discussion with a couple of our young professionals, so it comes very timely on that part. I don't have an answer as should we have a senior awareness program. Actually, it's a very, very interesting title. But it is true. Every generation, I think, regardless of industry or anything, every generation has the struggle of how do you make your points valid. So to discuss with more senior people, I think you all experienced this when you were young, and as you get old, you experience the opposite. That is, you get young people. I used to be extremely annoying. I got a colleague there too, certified, by the way, a former colleague. And then as one grows older, then you look at these young people and you think, oh man, he thinks he knows everything or something, right? I mean, I think it's not just now. I think it's been happening ever since the beginning of mankind. I think what we need, and it's a bit also I refer in my speech, perhaps what we need is us seniors. I grew my beard for this conference. Us seniors should probably, again, interact more often with universities, but not just with professors. I go and teach, take internships, be challenged by somebody who's completely wrong. I mean, sometimes I had a guy once trying to convince me that there is an amazing market for Airbus to sell mock-ups, right? But he was an intern, but again, if I told that to the sales guy, probably the big sales guys would be like, what are you talking about? But again, if one treats the person with respect, you go back and you think, okay, I could think that way. So it does require this frequent interaction, just like when we are having children and having this thing. So,
Professor Lee?
Okay, I will add my experience on the mixing of senior and junior matters. In my school, I have 6 aircraft and about 120 students who want to be a pilot, and I have 12 instructors. And among them, I have 4 senior instructors and 8 junior instructors. I really enjoyed the mixing of that kind of combination. So harmonization of senior and junior is very important. But we have to understand there should be a willingness. The senior should have a willingness to provide his knowledge and experience to young generations, and the young generations should accept their experience and knowledge with a good atmosphere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Lee. I believe experience is really an important tool in aviation. So I strongly recommend the young generation to get as benefit as possible from the experienced people in front of them. So it is not a matter of being a danger of their current position. So I have a second question to Mr. D. Can we ask, you are government worker for the CAAC or the representative of the schools you have mentioned. As a CAAC official, other schools are also part of aviation education units of China. Is it correct? Please. The microphone? Yeah, thank you.
我没有看到他。
Thanks for the host. Actually, in my presentation, I have already mentioned that in the past 4 decades, the talent training for China civil aviation has been done by 5 universities under our management. With the increasing development of the civil engineering sector, now we started to work for the joint programs and the joint course for the students. I think, and our professor from South Korea also mentioned about the pilot training. Then let me just share with you how China civil aviation helped to build the framework and how many of the universities are in this regard. And in the past, in China, we only have 1 university that is a flying school of the China civil engineer and civil aviation for the training. For example, for the passengers aircraft, we have 10,000 students in that academy alone, and we train staff with 4,000 aircrafts, and we have 400 instructors. So this is really a huge academy for the flying education, but still, no matter how big it is, it still could not accommodate the industrial needs. So since 2015, we started to work with Ministry of Chinese Education, and we approved other universities who have the aeronautics as well as the aviation education programs to start the training of the pilots. I still remember in the morning session, Mr. Huang and yesterday Mr. He all mentioned about the Beihang University. They have a flying school, and that flying school is the 2nd flying school here in China. So jointly speaking, we have 19 universities in China that are committed on the training of the pilots. And I believe in the near future there will be more academies and universities join our journey to contribute to the training of the pilots. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. B. In fact, I have got 2 more questions, but due to the time is up, I would like to make my summary, and I kindly invite the program manager to provide some suitable answers to the questions raised later on, during the break or after the session. In accordance with our discussions, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to underline 2 points which are important for a national NGAP strategy. First, the cooperation between government institutions, such as labor, educational and aviation institutions, and the industry is essential when developing national plans. Not only for NGAP, this cooperation is also essential for all aviation-related plans, whether it is national or regional or global. Second, proper preparation is another key issue for a successful plan. Undertaking gap analysis for short-term and long-term personal needs, considering such things as expected technological developments, traffic growth, state priorities, including infrastructure, should also be considered during the preparatory phase. When we forecast, we need to consider that jobs of tomorrow will not look like jobs of today. Therefore, we need to use new technologies available as much as possible. I believe this summary covers our discussions, and I kindly invite you all to applaud the distinguished panel members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haydar, and thank you, all of you. Another big round of applause for our panel and our moderator. And this concludes the first part of the afternoon. We'll have a coffee break, and I'm looking forward to have you all here back at 3:30. Thank you very much. Of Georgia, Carlin Toner, Director, Global Strategy, Office of International Affairs, FAA, United States. Hai-Eng Chiang, Director, Asia Pacific Affairs, CANSO. Steve Brown, Chief Operating Officer, National Business Aviation Association on behalf of IBAC. Vincent Gori, Senior Vice President, European and International Affairs, French Aerospace Industry Association, GIFAS. John Watrett, Chancellor, Embry Reader Aeronautical University Worldwide Campus. And Dong Sheng Wen, Chair of the Aerospace College Alliance of Sino Universities, ARCAS. 7 experts in different fields with a lot of experience in their back that will try to help us as ICAO and as a broader community to find the best way to address the strategic view and way forward for NGAP. In the interest of time, all the biographical information for each of these distinguished speakers can be found on the summit website and in the app. You can download from there. And as I said, a lot of discussion today and yesterday. We had the opportunity to see a number of important issues, such as current and future challenges of aviation, and how, from our point of view, of NGAP point of view, we can address them. We also hear the various views on how we can prepare the young generation of tomorrow for jobs we cannot even foresee today, and why it is important to have a strong partnership between states, industry and educational institutions. Our collective goal is, of course, to ensure that the future air transport network will be able to attract and retain the best and the brightest that our coming generation have to offer. And the purpose of this panel is to hear the views on how we can work together at the global level to identify long-term resources needs and establish strategies to attract, educate and retain aviation professionals, considering diversity and gender equity. But before starting our roundtable discussion, we have 2 presentations that will be introduced to you, and it's my great pleasure to first hear about the GIFAS experience from our colleague Vincent. Vincent.
Bonjour à tous, Ni hao ma, good afternoon. About GIFAS, we are a member of the European Association ASD, and which is itself a member of ICCAO. So I'm going to speak about the perspective of the manufacturing industry regarding the issue of NGAP, and focused on MRO. Before going further, just a small word about GIFAS. What do we do? We are a dual industry. We have approximately 400 members, located in France only. Revenues in 2017 were 64 billion euros. We invest quite a lot in research, and the workforce is in 2017 for our members was 190,000 employees. Our members are big members are prime contractors such as Airbus, Dassault, Safran, Thales, but also equipment manufacturers or SMEs. About the number of employees, we had created last year 2,000 jobs. And but globally we had 12,000 recruitments, and these recruitments were mostly, we can see that we have 25% of young graduates, 25% of women, and actually we're trying to catch up on, the workforce globally, on the women's side it's more like 10% globally, so we're trying to catch up by having more recruitment of ladies. And the recruitments are split between engineers and skilled workers. We have for the next year, for 2018, we had a plan of recruiting 12,000 people again. And we have an issue, like in the rest of the aviation industry, we have an issue of recruitment and attractiveness, more for the smaller companies than for the bigger ones, obviously. And we can say that, I've been traveling quite extensively, it's an issue which we are facing, which is being faced by the manufacturing industry in different places of the world, and so it's really a global concern. So now about, the next generation of professionals in MRO. It seems obvious, but since we are, there are more and more aircraft flying in the sky, you need to have more technicians for the maintenance, and it's the case for the maintenance of, the online maintenance by the airlines, but also, by the OEMs or in third-party MRO shop. As we had seen this morning, ICAO presented us some figures about the needs. So 600,000, 70,000 technicians will be required over the next 20 years. It's not that easy to recruit that many, to hire or to train that many technicians, to recruit them and train them. Of course, the schools, the training schools have to be certified, EASA Part 147, for example. The technicians themselves have to be qualified, have to have a license, Part 66. And so it's, the entry for schools, there's some entry, some investment to be made and to enter into this field. We experience difficulty with the lack of instructor. I think that we can say that globally. Referring to the previous panel, there's of course ad hoc solutions like having senior people working part-time, at the end of their career between MRO shop and the school. Because we do have an issue of salaries. Salaries in the training sector are less attractive than in the industry. So the lack of attractiveness, should be, I'll explain to you later on what we try to do in France to increase this attractiveness. And I would say that among the possible solutions, besides having modern schools and attractive schools, one of the obvious solutions is to have more women in the sector. In the MRO industry, our figures give a level of 10% of women in our sector. So it's obvious that if we want to cope up with the needs of recruitment, we need to have more women in the sector. And I'll come back for the promotions of the jobs. The other challenge we face in MRO is that we are going to have, more and more modern aircraft with new technologies on board. Like, for example, more electrical aircraft, more autonomous aircraft, the thermoplastic composites will be so all these new technologies on board of the aircraft means that we have to have new trainings, new competencies with the technicians. At the same time, the older generation of aircraft will still be in service for another, you know that we produce our aircraft, we are flying for 30, 40 years, so we need to have the required skills both for the older generation of aircraft, where all the documentation is on paper, and the new generation of aircraft with, everything is online, and we have new technologies on board. At the same time, with digitalization and new technologies such as artificial intelligence, big data, blockchain, there are new services which we can be offered to the customers. We can, there can be, of course, predictive maintenance, for example, and that changes completely the way we do the work of the MRO, the maintenance itself of the aircraft, and so we can save lots of money and give a better service to the customers. So all this generates new jobs, or that the traditional jobs will evolve. For example, I mean, if you look at, new jobs such as a service data manager, they will have to know how to exploit the data, select the correct data, relevant data, and so on. So this is an important evolution, which I think we have to face together. Now, now going, more locally, what we do in France, we try to promote the industry amongst the youngsters. Of course, we do have to support the engineering schools, such as ENAC, which we have seen, who was present earlier today, and ISAE, for example, but also schools for technicians and workers. But we do have lots of actions of promotions. I would like to mention two of them. That's what we call, at the time of the Paris Air Show, we have a dedicated exhibition or area for jobs and schools. It's called the Carrier Plane, or Avion des Métiers in French. We do have quite a lot of youngsters coming there. They are, of course, attracted by the air show itself. And what we are doing here, I've seen it elsewhere, of course, in different air shows. And definitely it's one of the main areas where we can create motivation for youngsters. When I was a kid, I used to go to the Paris Air Show every 2 years, so that's how I came into the business, into the aviation sector. Rocketry challenge, that's a just to mention it, it's so rockets, it's not plane, but it's not so far. We again at the throughout the years we have a contest for youngsters, and they learn to work in teams. And we organize a national contest. They have to launch a rocket at a certain altitude with a payload, and we measure whether they respect the parameters, and it's done nationally. And then we have an international final taking place either at the Paris Air Show or the Farnborough Air Show. So, our sector, it's a sector where we do work internationally. We cooperate between countries. So learning to work and to work with other teams from different countries, it's a first step, which is very important for them to then continue to work in our sector. Just finish quickly by saying that the next Paris Air Show will be taking place on between 17th and 23rd of June, and that we would be happy of hosting an NGAP event during that time, if you think it's relevant at ICAO level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vincent. And now I will invite Mr. Wen to deliver his presentation on ARCAS. As we've seen from the strategic point of view, it's important to come together and to build partnership. We've seen through GFAS the alliance of the industry. Now we'll have a touch on the alliance of universities, and we witnessed earlier in the morning the creation of our association. But right now it's a good opportunity to see what at the local level has been put in place to coordinate the efforts in this endeavor. So Mr. Wen.
Thank you, Kathleen, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me.
What at the local level
gentlemen. As Kathleen just mentioned, my name is Dong Shenwen. I actually have two hats, and I'm the Dean of the School of Aeronautical Science and Engineering in Beihang University, and also the Dean of School of General Engineering in Beihang University. In the same time, I'm the Executive Board Member of Aerospace College Alliance of Silo Universities. I will take this opportunity to reflect some of the higher education in China practice, especially think about the ways for the future, aviation and aerospace engineering talents, how we define the characters of next generation of aviation and aerospace talents, and how we implement this to make this a possible dream come true. So here I give you a very brief introduction of ACAS. It will be very brief. ACAS stands for Aerospace College Alliance of Silo Universities. It was established a couple of years ago, initially including 18 universities, but now has doubled its number. It's including major institutes that offer aerospace and aviation education in China. So the establishment of this organization is really trying to promote the aerospace and aviation education, research, and international collaboration and innovation in China. One of its key roles is to promoting how to educating our next generation of aviation and aerospace engineering talents. So the ACAS, we have annual meetings like twice per year, rotating in different universities. We also have a student conference, bring together the young talents, and normally those conferences a couple hundred people. So we set up some initiatives in developing regional developments with European side to partner with PACSAS in order to have some cross-continent activities and practices here. So example, those are the universities and currently has been involved in ACAS. So basically they have three type of universities that has been involved. Number one is this traditional university that has very deep root in aerospace engineering research education. This includes Beihang University, Northern Polytechnic University of in Xi'an, and the Nanjing University of Aeronautics and Astronautics. Such those universities are strong root in aerospace, and all the university develops around the aerospace regime. The second part of this university, including those newly emerging departments like Tsinghua, Fudan, and Shanghai Jiaotong University, they only have one department in aerospace or aviation side. The number three type are those from CAA, China Aviation Authorities, and they sponsored the universities mainly aiming for the promoting, educating the talents that serves pilots and supporting the commercial general engineering, the general aviation program. So those are three major kinds of institutes currently ACAS is having. So we also think because of the diversities of the universities and also the different practice in different parts of the world, one of the really key questions we keep asking, what are the perspectives for new engineering? What are the characters and the way really helping to educating for our next generations? So we have our colleagues from Russia, they have their own answer. We have colleagues from Northern America, and they are doing a lot of practice from the Europe. You will get answers, different answers from different countries. So here you will see one of the diagrams we're trying to bring this into is that in Chinese teaching, especially aviation and aerospace engineering, it's quite straight line. So it goes all the way going straight. This means there's have a very rigid disciplines. We got disciplines for example, electronic engineering, where is normally the school for aeronautic engineering, school for engines, and a school of management. But in the same time, we're facing really a huge problem, a problem of integration. The knowledge develops so quickly. We understand everything that goes into, for the future, artificial intelligence, big data, and the new energies, the Internet of Things. All this can be covered by a single discipline. So instead of going horizontally, individually, leading to individual schools, I think we need to really think about a way of engineering that has a more integration, more cross-discipline. So those are a few words, and we currently have a thinking. What are the talents, characteristics we really need it? So I put these 5 rings here. That stands for Olympics. So the number 1, we think we do encourage is international. The world is getting smaller, and we've become a global village, and internationalization is have to way forward, especially in the aviation sectors, and in one day you cross a different continent and you arrive in different countries. Interdisciplinary, clearly is another way, and the single problems becomes very complex problem indeed for any future things. We need to really use in different disciplines that we can have to really to tackle in this sense. Innovation is one thing we are very highly emphasize. This is important because it's a low solution to one single issues. We are facing quite a lot of unknown problems. So think about how do we manage all these things. We put the leadership here in this ring. The last ring we put into integration. So how do we integrate all these things together to make this as a really meaningful engineering programs? We think those 5 words are so much important to our future aviation aerospace engineers. So I classify this as I4L. So this is really, we think we should have the knowledges and the teaching and the cultivate our next generations of talents. So, as the dean of 2 schools in Beihang University, I have to state that Beihang has been practiced quite a long time ago, dating back to 20 years ago. We started trying to develop different specialized programs to cultivate different specialized engineering programs. We set up a silo French school. We set up different college systems. And about 2 years ago, some of the sorts which I just mentioned has been coming into a reality to make this as a school of general engineering. So this is a new school. It's a new school sponsored nationally, and we have a small school. This school has only 20 students intake every year, but the best top college students in China. So we are now goes into the 2nd year. So what this school is really looking for is really looking for developer students, especially develop the capabilities of solving problems facing a fast-changing world, to empower the students with these I4L characteristics. So we have been benchmarking against with different top universities such as MIT and Georgia Tech, and also we develop curriculum systems and trying to building top programs in China. So the reasons we have been coming to this stage because we're really conflicting a lot of reflections. Different parts of the world have different rules in terms of education, also have its own disadvantages and advantages. For example, I spent 16 years in UK, and I very much understanding how the European system works. The students got more freedom in explore by themselves, and they have more initiatives, more time, and they're more likely doing the project-based learning or problem-based learning, etc. But in China, so everything is by taught. So the students are strong, very good, solid backgrounds. So they are strong in mathematics, they are very determined to learn, and they are very keen to learn, but their capability of solving practical problems is very much limited. So this is my thinking, how I could bring this to the barriers of these two systems and bring a unified program. So we think about the characters that really is required based surrounding our I4L characteristics, then thinking about we have a 4-year program in China. So which year in year 1 we should place, and in year 2, year 3, and year 4, how we achieve this interdisciplinary, how we achieve the leadership programs. So those are the ways we are doing too. We apply this backward design curriculum program. So we come up with such a program. Such a program is a 4-year program. It's a compilation of knowledge, attitude, and the skills, and we merge all the leadership, management skills into the engineering the disciplines, and we give the students a lot of freedom in explore what will happen, give the capability to solve real problems from the very beginning. For example, we put such a similar programs. Those programs and actually structured, they combines with both UK and China's advantages. In year 1, we impart students very solid mathematics and physics, so that I think is very important, especially from students from China. In year 2, they will exposed to different aspects of engineering, mechanical engineering, aerospace engineering, and ICT technologies. Those are stands for 3 pillars of the engineering program. Then they get more specialized in aerospace and mechanical engineering, and those are more engineering specific programs that end up with capstone projects. So those programs set up, I think we will be perfectly in line with the characters that we are trying to develop. We build on leadership programs into these 4-year programs. We're talking about NGAP programs and global challenging scholars programs, and working this together with the American colleagues. And we gave, for example, here I just gave a very brief examples for the year 1 students. Those are students at the age of 18. They come from middle school and come away from the family. The first time they come to university, in the year 1, they expose them to a course called General Engineering, Introduction to General Engineering. So this course, they don't have a textbook. It's an idea factory. They stay here, and they were grouped into different groups, and they were given a task. This task is really project-driven, and they will be guided by supervisors to do the design, joint design, safety design, CD design, and doing the manufacture at the end to make up a prototype that really can help, can solve issue problems. I just show you 2 examples here. So that's the end of my talk, actually. So I can translate this for you, and I don't. The number 1 is doing really facing practical problems when we open a door. If you are opening a door, you will sometimes be occasionally bump into a bicycle, cyclists, and all the people, passengers that are watching bike because there's a blind spot there. So the professor project, the students, 5 students come up with a very intelligent idea. They put 2 sensors there. The first sensor is put inside the handle. When the driver wants to open the door, he places his hand by the door side, so that triggers the signal. Trigger the signal to open the second sensor, which is a camera. That camera detects the coming projects. If the camera detects that there's a moving project is coming on, it's starting alarming. Beep, beep, beep. That's actually stopped the driver in opening the door. So this is one practical example. The second example, and I don't think it works, is combined with portable vehicle equipment, and you will see a lot of scooters that drive in a car on the street, but all these scooter drivers, they don't have the capacities of holding a bag. So this kind of vehicle become very popular in China. The kids take this to school, but they are worried about where they put the bags, school bags. So this group of students comes up with the idea, build on conventional scooters, build up a storage space for this, and design using batteries and powers, the whole mechanical system to make this run and make this happening. So this is another examples for those sort of simple projects. But remember, although these projects are still very crude at this stage, but they are starting for year 1. The first student, when they are exposed to these sort of ideas, and making the first products in all the life. Okay, so I think those are a few practices I was sharing with you guys, and hoping we have more discussion for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've seen two examples of how working together can bring us more strategic option and how we can better address the challenges that we have. Now let me start our discussion with and address my first questions to Levan, Steve and Vincent. How do you think that NGAP can be addressed at the global level, and what are the benefits of doing so? We have the program, we explain it, we all agree that we need something at the global level, but how we can address it, through which mean a strategy, a global plan, or other, with here in the opening an action plan. What do you think that are specific types of options that we have in front of us, and how we can manage to deliver this? Levan? The mics?
Now it works. Well, thank you. Thanks, Catherine, and good afternoon, everybody. Before addressing your question, Catherine, I would like to thank organizers, thanks ICAO and Chinese authorities for organizing this great event, I would say. And yesterday I was really having a fantastic feeling when I saw all these cadets here sitting and students, and I hope they are still here, and I would like to address some of them, or the remaining part of the students, that they are lucky enough, because 20 years ago, when I was in first year of Aviation University, I would not even have dreamt of saying Secretary General or ICAO's officials and officials from different CAAs, industry representatives. So you're lucky, and take this momentum, and well done, because you are in one of the best sectors of the economy, which is aviation, and I'm great supporter of you. But at the same time, we already attracted them. They are already attracted, we can say. So we have to think about the younger generation that the students are, and I was really happy yesterday to see your initiative delivered by the program to go beyond and to talk to schools, kids, children, because unlike you, Javier, and this is my lessons learned, I failed to poison my 8-year-old son with aviation, because he's keen with Minecraft and with just motor cars, nothing to do with aviation, but I will try to improve and do my best. Back to the question now. Honestly speaking, I'm in regulatory authority for the last 8 years, and being in managerial position and active in different domains and dealing with a lot of activities. This year, okay, I've heard about NGAP, but this year, actually end of August, was the first time when I received official invitation, and I digged a little bit deeper into the subject, and I was surprised, so many activities done, but how comes that I had no idea of those activities beforehand, honestly speaking, and I think that for the last couple of years, you know, Kathleen, that I happen to be part of the task force dealing with GASP, Global Aviation Safety Plan, and there are good examples which ICAO has already got, and with dealing with different global challenges, I would say. And we worked on GASP, there's a GASP, there is a big domain of environmental protection and CORSIA process ongoing, number of issues which are addressed on the global level. So, and I do believe that for the future of evolvement of NGAP, rather than having a big academia here and universities, which is excellent, I would say, but this is exactly the moment now where we have to think really ahead. And since we have heard a lot of information, statistics, a lot of figures regarding demand in the coming future, but if this demand, this opportunity, in fact, if this turns to be a shortage, then this is a challenge which we should address right now, and this might become a risk then in the near future. I'm telling about 5-10 years time. Where should we get all these people? And quite recently, I would say for the last couple of decades, aviation become more and more part of our life, because a lot of people travel thanks to new business models, low-cost carriers, but a part of that, we hear more and more RPAS, drones, urban air mobility. So all of a sudden, a lot of people became exposed to aviation. They are kind of quasi-aviators or possible aviators in the future, but at least they know more about aviation and regulations as they used to know. So we have kind of millions of people now who are more aware of aviation industry and aviation overall. So there is also this kind of people where we can get them and attract them and get on board. So, and for sure, my belief is that we should, or ICAO, with ICAO's help, elaborate a little bit more and go beyond having NGAP as a program and have something similar or global plan to address next generation of aviation professionals. From state perspective, I have no idea, honestly speaking, how to address this for a moment and how to plan for national NGAP. So I would appreciate if there is something on a global level, then going to the regional one, like we have in GASP and GASEP, and then tackling it on a national level.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the states are used to look at ICAO after global plans in different areas: security, air navigation, efficiency, safety, and maybe CORSIA, as you said, maybe a global plan that embed a strategy, and the priorities for the future will be the answer that you as a state you are used to, and you know that in ICAO this is the way forward, and you are looking at this kind of approaches. Steve, from your side, what do you think that will be the right approach to approach the NGAP at the global level? How do you think that we can provide the best outcome for what we want to achieve?
Yes, well, thank you. I think there have been 37 presentations that I've listened to and thought about how to integrate the kinds of things that we could do as a community together to make a difference in the future. And I've come up with 5, and I'll list those very quickly. I think as a community, we could come together with ICAO, first of all, to really focus on the data that we have. We know what kind of growth we need. We know the challenges that are before us in terms of attracting talent and developing it. And just as ICAO does in the safety area, security, environment, they could keep this challenge in front of us, how much growth we've had, how much remains to be undertaken, what techniques and methods are working to help us fulfill this growth, keep those kinds of best practices in front of our community over this 20 to 30-year period. Secondly, I think all of us could work together as a community to recognize that we need more labor mobility. These are skilled jobs, as we've heard throughout the conference, but the national ability to develop the skills inside a state vary from state to state, and the demand for the employment varies, and they will never be perfectly matched inside a given country. And so to the extent that we can, begin to work on the idea of greater labor mobility so that over time the labor can go where it is needed the most. Thirdly, we've heard that there is a real shortage not only of people to actually fly the planes, maintain the planes, but there's a shortage of instructors, people to teach in the training pipeline. How do we make sure that instructors stay in their position long enough to be very productive before they actually then go do the job? And how do we have the right supply of instructors? I know that at least in the United States, many of the airlines have done some very innovative things to try and make sure that instructors stay in their positions in companies and in universities long enough. But I think that's a global problem that we could work on and identify some best practices. Fourthly, I feel, having worked for an aviation regulator, that regulators around the world have always been too slow to embrace the value of simulation and automated training capabilities, and now are even very slow to embrace virtual reality and its potential. in the training context. And so I think in the whole area of technology utilization and credit in the training process, regulators need to come together and do a better job of recognizing the value of that. Lastly, and fifth, I think something we could all do with ICAO is identify key questions that need critical research so that we, in fact, can do a better job in the future in this area of generating the future talent we need and training it more quickly and efficiently than we have in the past. I'll give you an example. An organization that I've worked with very closely called ABI, the Aviation Accreditation Board International, commissioned some original research and sponsored it into what type of training process is the most efficient and produces the highest success in training. And so it looked at unstructured programs, lightly structured aviation curriculum and programs, and very disciplined and structured programs. And it looked at thousands of pilots over the last 5 years that had gone into the regional airline community, looked at their training success and failure, and no surprise, it identified that the more structured the training, the more disciplined the curriculum, the greater the success and the efficiency in the training. Well, you might have thought that logically going into it, but now we have actual data that proves that this is true. And so bringing those best practices into the training process to make sure that we get the right talent through the process as quickly and efficiently at the lowest cost possible is an area of best practice that I think we could work with ICAO to help propagate on a global basis as well. So I think there are kind of these 5 opportunities that I've heard from the conference that I think it'd be very beneficial for us to focus on in the future.
Thank you, Steve. Vincent, some ideas on what could be globally address the challenge that we have in NGAP?
Difficult to speak after Steve. It's so clear what he said. So what can I add? I fully agree on most of the points that which were said by Steve. I think that at the manufacturing industry, we also have to recognize the importance of working together on common issues like skills, mobility. As it was said, it's not that easy because we have the cultural barriers sometimes, not only barriers that which are man-made, but also in our mind we have cultural barriers. So we have to work on that and improve maybe the training. Standardizing the training and working on a common approach would be certainly a good way, as it was proposed. I think.
Thank you, Vincent. One of the challenges that we have is also to see in big what will be the objective if we'll put in place a strategy. We have our strategy, but if we are well design our strategy, what will be the objective and what kind of roadmap we can have in order to address these elements of the strategy. Dr. Carlin and John maybe can help us with this, and I think I have 2 slides from Carlin.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really a privilege to be able to share some perspectives from both a regulator and air navigation service provider's perspective. I think through the last day and a half, we've heard about the fantastic transformation that aviation is going through today. It's exciting. We've also clearly heard about the shortage we have in engineers, pilots, all parts of our aviation ecosystem, and we've heard we have untapped potential. We've also heard some potential solutions. Now, I come from the FAA, but I also have my own stories, and I believe all of our stories help shape our ideas and what really is core to us. When I was a young girl, I loved math. I don't know why. I just liked it. And somebody told me that aerospace engineers used a lot of math. So I thought that was very important, and I became an aerospace engineer. And after many years of college, I went to work at my dream job at NASA. And there I learned that, gee, Carlin, in 30 years, you'll know enough to be a good aerodynamicist. Okay, let's go back to the task at hand with that said. And the point I'd like to make this afternoon is one that I've heard touched upon briefly in many of the panels, but a thread not fully pulled. And I recommend that as we build a program, we not forget to incorporate the idea of leadership. Leadership is really what's going to bind together the technical innovation, the operations, and the structural, the regulation, the legal policies that go with aviation. Now, we all come from different cultures, different places, but one thing that's clear in this forum, we have a universal need. We need leaders who can adapt very quickly. We need leaders with the confidence to make difficult decisions. Our system is complex. And our leaders need the strength to carry forward with a new generation. Now, if I'm able to work the slides quite well, and I think I achieved it, I've framed my points out in leadership in 3 areas. And I'm going to start with what I'll call imminent leaders. They're the leaders of tomorrow, right now, the here and now. And I think our corporate and university programs know how to work with these seasoned professionals who are committed to aviation and who want to be leaders, who know they're being groomed to be leaders. I don't think they're our biggest challenge. Now, we've spent a large part of our time, rightfully so, talking about what I'll call horizon leaders at the other end of the spectrum, people who are possibly more than 5 years from even entering our workforce. They're those bright folks that love math, love science, need skills, have passion, need that passion built, and they'll be using the newest technologies. I think we've selected some good paths forward. My recommendation is for these leaders of the future, it's about information, it's about marketing, it's about outreach, all the things we've talked about here. I think as we increase our outreach and our focus, though, we need to be careful to measure its effectiveness as we go forward. Now I'd like to turn to my last point, which I think is the point we've got to remember, the point that's part of my story, is that we need to look at our future leaders, perhaps those that are maybe 2 to 5 years for leadership. In the United States, and I've heard in many of your countries, we're facing what we call the retirement cliff. Many of the longtime contributors will be moving on to new opportunities. And we need to focus on that next generation of leaders who will come in and help foster those new ideas. They need to be adaptable. They need to have technical savvy, which they probably will. But not all leaders in the pipeline are going to be so adaptable and so embracing of change. So we've got to be careful. That brings me to my last short points, which are 4 ideas that I think have to be important as we build an NGAP strategy, and we've talked about all of them. 1 is to inspire, 2, to educate, 3, and I think we've seen great examples here, partnerships, it's something ICAO can bring, and 4, that willingness to improve as we cycle through it. I think my final thought as I conclude, and I think about my own small story, is that it's leadership that's going to provide both that strategic and systems thinking that's going to allow the ideas that our next generation brings to the table to flourish. And I want them to flourish. And by the way, I haven't been a practicing aerodynamicist for 20 years now. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Carlin. John, from your point of view, you are one of the global leaders in providing education. I'm sure that, and I know that your schools all over the world are full, but how we can do more, because we are efficient, we are effective in trying to prepare the younger generation for the future, but how we can make sure that they will follow the path of what they are taught, and they will really enter into the aviation career. Just as a parenthesis, I can tell you that my colleagues from the university, more than half of them are not working today in aviation, but they have different leadership positions in banking, computer science, and all other stuff. So how we can manage to bring people inside. The education is your job and you are doing it perfectly, but how we can retain in the future this, and what could be a main objective of a strategy of NGAP?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you to ICAO and the people here in Shenzhen for providing a great conference. One of the key objectives going forward is I think what Carla said, is that partnership, the partnership between government, industry and academia, and it is encouraging that academia is still going to be a major part of the road forward for it. A lot of discussion of learning and academics and how we can work with everyone to get that moving forward. And there's a lot been said about what do you define the next generation of aviation professional. Is that a young person coming out of high school, going into college, and then going into the aviation industry, or is it someone mid-career that's changing they want to change and look to aviation as a new career? We at Embry-Riddle are able to bridge both those gaps. I mean, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University we've got 2 residential campuses, one in Daytona Beach, one in Prescott, Arizona. Traditional students coming out of high school, going into college for 4 years and then going into the industry. And then through the worldwide campus, we've got this global network that includes the military and the working professional that is looking to get that degree to move into the industry. And whether it be a short course or whether it be an academic degree, they're able to do it. Both of those, we need to look at it, and it's encouraging to hear throughout that we do need to go deeper into the high school, elementary school, to really attract and tell the story of aviation, aerospace for these young people, to make them excited for it, into it. And we're going to have challenges by that. Amazon, everyone knows Amazon. They're in the aviation industry they're going to deliver packages with drones, which is part of the new generation. But Amazon is already realizing they need computer scientists, computer engineers, software engineers. So they have set up a program that's called Amazon Future Engineers, and it's got 3 steps. It goes right into the kindergarten, and it's starting basic program in the kindergarten level up through K8, doing things. Then they go to the high school area, and they work with high schools, going through and encouraging programming, and they give scholarships up to $10,000 to go for a student to go to college into the engineering, software, computer engineering field, and then also provide internships. So it's not that we're going to completely replicate that, but it shows that that is a competing group that we're looking at, that STEM group that Amazons and other industries are looking to gain and attract into their industry. We need to do the same thing for the aviation. So I think that's where the industry and government need to step up if we're going to really increase the number of aviation professionals coming into that. So that's for the young people, attracting the young people into it is one objective to going forward. The other is the mid-career. And then we at Embry-Riddle have been working with the military and transitioning military personnel who have been in the military for 4 to 8 years, are coming out and looking for a new career. They've got skill sets in either in the aviation industry or mechanical or other skills. We can put them through a certificate to get them ready to go into the aviation industry. They might not be able to get their AMP license from FA at the time, but they can go in with a non-AMP work, and then industry could help them work towards getting an AMP license. So that again is a partnership with government from allowing, because they're separating with Skills Bridge program to come through, working with industry, working with academia to get to that point. And then my last point in terms of NGAP is what many have talked about here. A lot has been said about the shortage of pilots, the shortage of MRO, the shortage of ATC. But we also have to realize it's the next generation we're looking at. What is the next generation of jobs going to look at? Are we always, and I think it was mentioned in a couple of panels, are we always going to have 2 pilots in the flight deck? Are we going down to single pilot, which would reduce that number? Are we going down to autonomous flight, which would take that number of pilots out altogether? Then what would the skill set need to be replaced, those pilots, with what's going on to next? So I think that's another area that we as industry, we as academia, we as government agencies need to look at as we go forward.
Thank you, John. And I think it's important to see how your focus on the partnership was reflected also in your organization, because in fact, and I want to congratulate your colleague Angela for being instrumental in putting in place the partnership agreement that was signed earlier today. So, and on the other way, I can see the best way to promote peace is to steal their best experts. So could be an option at a certain moment to go in this direction and to try to get back the expertise from other parts of the industry and to bring them back in our aviation field. My last question will be, once we see how we can address NGAP at the global level through global plans or other ways to make it more aware for our states, industry and academia. We've seen what could be the objective of on NGAP strategy. I want to ask Mr. Chang and Mr. Wen, what will be, in your opinion, the focus areas of an NGAP strategy? Where we should look first, and what should be our targets and the kind of timing? Dr. Chang.
Well, thank you very much, Kathleen. Firstly, I must say that aviation intrinsically is a glamorous sector. So if we do not get our fair share of talent, we need to ask why this is happening. This issue is basically one of demand and supply side. This is something that air navigation service providers are not unfamiliar with, because we handle this all the time. So on the issue of demand, we need to focus on things like the growth forecast that we have seen. We need to focus on the technology that's coming, the technological disruption that it's not just only about challenges, but also the opportunities that come with technologies like artificial intelligence, robotics, you mentioned virtual reality. These things will increase productivity and change the way we do our work. Then on the supply side, we need to look at the access to education and training. Where there is excess capacity, existing capacity, what sort of courses need to be changed and adapted to new technology. We need to look into recruitment, training, and retention. And retention is a lot about career development, and jobs may have to be redesigned. So I think for the global strategy that we want to look at. We also need to look, if you are coming up with a document similar to the Global Aviation Safety Plan or some of these ICAO global plans, we would like to, we should share some of the experiences that we have heard over the last couple of days. There are best practices that have already been promoted by certain states, and what are the challenges they face, the solutions that they've implemented. These are something that can be collated and shared among states and industry partners. So ultimately, what we want to do is to provide the state with a strategy to implement the national plans, as what was mentioned by the other panel speakers. And in terms of timings and targets, I think this depends on, this cannot be cast in stone because the growth forecasts need to be updated. Technology changes all the time. You never know what technology will be like 10, 20 years down the road. But so therefore, the targets that we set in such a plan needs to be reviewed and regularly updated. So I think basically this covers the few points that I want to.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Wen, also, what do you think that will be or should be the focus on our NGAP strategy? And I want to embed also a question coming from the floor. In fact, it was represented in different areas also. The fact that we see alternative ways to manage and to replace somehow the air traffic controllers, the pilots, but for mechanics and engineers, I didn't hear yet any kind of possibility to say, starting tomorrow, because of this innovation or invention, we don't need engineer anymore. We will be okay, and we might find other options in this area. What do you think in terms of focus of NGAP, and also a little bit on the shortage of engineers and in terms of construction of aeroplanes and all the flying objects? What do you think that will be the focus and the challenge that we have in this area?
Thank you, Kathleen. I think there's today actually is a good example. So we are really trying to address some of the key issues that are facing us. I think there are different levels. Number one, we really should acknowledge the existence of the difference and the imbalance and the diversities of different parts of the world in terms of our next generation aviation professionals. Even in China, we have different levels, different universities, different institutes. There's a huge difference in terms of quantity and the qualities. We have similar things that happens in Russia, the Middle East, in Northern America, Southern America, and Europe. So how to adjust these differences and also diversities is the ones we need to bear in mind for the next generation of talents. Number two, we have to do something to reach on the goals. If we have a set clear ideas what we want to achieve, and then we see there's a big gap inside, so how we fill this gap? So we have been trying to different practices. For example, the establishes ACAS. We're really trying to address the quality issues in China, in mainland China, because there are some newly established universities which does not have enough resources and also the staff to really guarantee a very good quality of teaching. So I believe similar things exist in many other places in Europe, Southern Europe, in Western Europe, Eastern Europe. So there were a lot of differences. So we're trying to do something at the regional levels. I think a similar thing is doing impacts us. Number three, I think we have to do it more. So IQ actually is sitting in a very perfect situation, so with his influence nationally and internationally, and we waitlist the establishment of ICAO this morning, which I believe is a very great initiative. So this may be a very, very small step in terms of today's activity, but I hope it's a giant step for reach our goal for the next generation of aviation talents. So I'm also here to propose, and actually I propose an idea, how we possibly to make the establishment, for example, today's ICAO program makes it more meaningful and more reachful, which is possible. We combine this together with the NGAP programs and under the leadership of ICAO, for example, the next year and in the coming years, involve different regions, the ACAS, PEXAS, and the different parts of the world to really have a critical mass. So in that way, I think we can address a lot of issues, the issues with lack of talk, lack of conversation, and also the diversity and balance issues. So that's my suggestion and also the recommendation for ICAO, and I believe if we can work together nicely with IQ, and we can address many, many issues in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wan, and thank you all of you for your intervention. We have a few questions. Some of them I already tried to embed it in our discussion. We had an interesting question why we don't have any representative of the new generation on the stage, but let me remind you that we have the Model ICAO next door where 180 young generation future professionals are trying to explore the best way to deal with some of the challenges of the future. There is a jigsaw connection, but hopefully we will be able at our end to put together what is coming from that side with what we are doing today, and I can promise that next year we will have a very balanced approach toward the next generation levels. Looks, you are too young to be a director general, I know, but still we are talking about high school students. Nevertheless, we talk about global plans, way to address the strategic option of NGAP. We talk about leadership, communication, partnership, and change. We talk about new technologies and how to identify at the global level the challenges that we have and how to implement it at the regional and national level. So I think it was an excellent discussion. We have more ideas on how to address NGAP and make sure that we will take this back home and in our environment, ICAO environment, working with all of you, we will have a chance to advance our work. Tomorrow morning you will hearing about what we are doing in ICAO in different areas, not only on safety, but air navigation, security, environment, research. So you will have an idea on how we try to address the challenges of NGAP, but these 2 days were extremely important for us and for us as a community, because we really enjoy having the opportunity to discuss, to exchange information, and to see what is the best way forward. Once again, thank you once again for all the efforts and all your contribution. A big round of applause for this panel. And with this, we come to the end of our session for today. The NGAP will stop here, but we continue, our colleagues, we will continue with an informal presentation of the future plans for the Shenzhen Airport Group. So if you want to attend, you are free to do it at 4:45. And once again, thank you very much for today. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Thank you.